All right, next up, Bob Regnerus. And Bob's going to talk about the heart of the machine. I've known Bob for, I'm going to say, like 15 years for Facebook ads. He's a co-author in the book and absolute genius. But today is going to talk about how to infuse AI with humanity and creativity and how to deepen our authentic intelligence. So I'm excited to hear about this.
I think the secret, Dennis, is that I probably won't talk about any of that. Cool. So, it is the end of the day. How are all of you doing? Are we doing okay? Okay. I coach high school basketball, and one of the things I do with my team when we're ready to play a game is we get up in the locker room and we take a deep breath. So I'm going to ask you to stand up right now. I'm not going to ask you to dance. This is a Planet Perry event, okay? Just do one thing for me. Take a big, deep, cleansing breath. Let it out. We're going to do that 2 more times. Thank you very much. That will re-energize you. Our breath is our life. Please have a seat. I'm going to go ahead and keep some notes up. How many of you were here last year and heard me speak? Excellent. Fresh meat. No, last year was a very interesting time. If you know my story, I'll go through it a little bit. But I spoke last year, I believe, about 3 weeks after my mom passed. And so I came to last year's event thinking I was going to do what Megan has done for you, which is talk about story, because that's what Brandon and I do. And instead, I talked about identity, authenticity, human connection, and it really has started and accelerated something for me over the last year. And I'm going to share that with you today. I love story. I absolutely, Megan, I think we met in Marina Del Rey like 14, 12 years ago. It's got to be, I think it was a J. Abraham. 2015, okay. Megan wasn't doing story back then. You were an agency. I was an agent working in an agency. So we have similar arcs in terms of kind of shifting to different things. This is interesting for me. When I look over this room, I see a lot of people that are family. I mean that, like this is a family reunion. I see Dr. Mark in the back. We've known each other 10, 12 years. Mark is a great, big, giant teddy bear just like I am. So if you want a great hug, Mark is a great hugger. And so guys, can you explain the clock to me? It's counting up right now. Do I have 40 minutes? Beautiful. Thank you, gents. Appreciate you. So when I come here, it is overwhelming just meeting up with friends and family and people that we recognize. I have clients in this room, I have students in this room, and it's really amazing to come here. If you're around Planet Perry for an extended time, and I would highly recommend it, you will become very close to some people in this room. Some of the people in this room are the closest to me that in my life, they are the closest confidants. And even so, I even let them stay in my house. Right, Scott? Right, Brandon? Right? So when you come to an event like this, you can't replicate this on Zoom. And so the human connection is so important, and I so treasure this. Okay? Now, how many of you over the past 2 days have heard recurring themes? Okay. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Well, we're all gathered here for one purpose. We all have this intention of coming here. We've invested money. We've invested time. We're investing of ourselves. And we've all kind of put this intention into these next 3 days as much as Perry's put intention into it. And what we're looking for, I think we're looking for answers. But really what we're looking for are questions. Now, what you've noticed, if you just are brand new to Planet Perry, is that there's more questions being thrown at you than answers. Is that correct? Okay. How many of you had more philosophical discussions than marketing discussions in the last 2 days? Okay. That is the type of culture that Perry has put together. It's the type of culture that I actually thrive in because I love to ask questions. Now, I had a little trepidation about coming up here at this time because after 2 days, one of the things I was afraid of, and it's happened, is that people have been talking about some of the same things I'm going to talk about. Okay? Now, that could either be me going, hey, you need to come up with something new, or it could be that I'm putting an exclamation point on the things that are really important. So the recurring themes that you are hearing and that maybe I put an exclamation point on for you are probably things that you want to be working on and want to be thinking about. I was talking to Kathy and Brandon this morning, and I have this vision where if you were to put 100 chefs into a kitchen and say, make spaghetti and meatballs, pretty classic dish, I guarantee you would get 100 different variations of spaghetti and meatballs. It would all look the same, but I guarantee you it would be slightly different ingredients, slightly different taste. One dish would be spaghetti and meatballs as much as the next dish. However, it would taste different. So think of me as a chef. Think of Megan as a chef. Think of David as a chef. Think of Tom as a chef. And when Dennis comes up tomorrow, and so forth, we're all chefs kind of talking about the same thing, preparing the same dish, all with our unique flavor. Today we are going to talk about business. We're going to talk about marketing. We're going to talk about AI. And we're going to talk about ourselves. Now, the question that I have on this slide, if you could show that, how many of you heard a speaker say these words this week? Multiple times. This is really interesting, isn't it? You know, I think many of us were thinking, oh, we're going to come to this conference and get information about AI. After listening to Megan, I think the reason we're here is we have an identity crisis. How many feel like they are either professionally or personally in the middle of a shift? Awesome. I want you to know that you're not alone, first of all, if you look around the room. But there are things happening that are intentional. Humanity is moving forward at such an electric pace. You know, I was thinking Perry and I and Brandon and Vivian, some others kind of met before the conference. And one of these things came to me, is that our parents could reasonably predict what their life would look like 10 years down the road, because it would look very similar to what life was like 10 years in the past, okay? I believe for us, and certainly for our children, the next generation, it's going to be very difficult for them to predict what the next 10 months is going to look like. Do you agree with that? We are in a world where we don't know what life will essentially look like 10 months down the road. And for a human, for humans who don't like change, that's scary, because we like things to stay the same. But Perry wrote an entire book all about evolution. And what is evolution? Change. That's what we're all about. So as we think about this, I want to share some thoughts with you. These are things that I think about, things that I talk about with family and friends, talk about with Perry. Do I have your permission to kind of dig into some of these topics and dig with some serious subjects? Are we okay with that? Awesome. Thank you for being with me. Appreciate that. All right. Christian shared this quote with me, about 2 months ago. To be yourself in a world that's constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. What does that mean to you, that quote? Say that again? Freedom. Interesting. Here's one thing that it says to me, is that in the absence of me asking that question, who am I, that there's going to be a long line of people that are going to be willing to tell me who I am. Okay? If I don't take the time and the energy and the thought to think about who I am, there are plenty of people that will line up and be glad to tell me who I am. And most of you have experienced this in your life. Our parents certainly told us who we should be. Our churches have told us who we should be. Our schools have told us who we should be. Our government tells us who we should be, right? Many people think of us, I'll call people, let's call them institutions. Think of us as cogs in a machine. Taxpayers, students, machines, right? We're not. We're humans. We have freedom of choice. We have freedom of choice. And one of the things we get to choose is who we are. And we're going to talk about that today. The danger of not asking yourself the question, who am I, leads to some of these things. You're just a cog. You're a laborer. You're a practitioner. Your growth is slow. It's painful. You have this constant conflict, this underlying simmering conflict inside of yourself. Resentment shows up. Frustration shows up. You make decisions where there's just low return on investment. You're doing things and there's not a lot of return. Your relationships are conflicted. They're shallow. You hop from opportunity to opportunity. You're susceptible to false hope, meaning somebody could sell you the goods and you're going to believe this is the thing. You're going to hop on that and say, this is certainly the thing that's going to take me out of this feeling. Nope. You're compensated for doing. Compensated for doing. Portrayal marketing. I don't know if that's a term. I just kind of came up with it. Here's what it means to me. I'm not sure who I am, but I'm going to go ahead and copy that person over there because I think they know what they're talking about. How many of us have bought blueprints from a guru and just said, hey, let's go ahead and let's just implement this blueprint because that worked for so-and-so. We're susceptible to that. Commodities. Ordinary, not unique. If you deal with clients and you don't know who you are going to have clients that are problems. So here's the opposite. Knowing who you are. When you come across somebody who is confident in who they are, you can see how things change. These are the experts, the leaders, the influencers in our culture. When you know who you are, you're going to experience rapid evolution. Now, that may be a scary thing, but it's actually an exhilarating thing. You're going to have this peace within. You're going to have fulfillment. You're going to make leveraged, profitable decisions in your business. You're going to have deep relationships, very grounded. You'll be sure and steadfast. You'll embrace reality. You'll be able to embrace what is. You're compensated for being or who you are. Your marketing becomes authentic. Instead of being a commodity, you're going to be boutique. Your clients will be dream clients. You know, I think Megan has done a fantastic job of helping kind of set the environment for what is it that you can do in a world where marketing is becoming, Sam showed us, speak it, and 5 minutes later it exists. When everybody can put marketing out, that means there's going to be more noise. And when there's more noise, there's more confusion. It's like walking into Walgreens and trying to buy toothpaste. There's an entire wall of toothpaste. How do you choose the right toothpaste? Well, imagine an entire store full of toothpaste. Imagine an entire mall full of toothpaste. That's what we're going to be facing very, very soon. So as we think about how am I going to stand out? How am I going to compete in the world of AI when there's a lot of noise? The answer that I have come to, and it's been an answer that I've given clients for 20 years, and it's be you. Be you. One of my mentors, Brian Kurtz, says that your customers, essentially, you are marketing to yourself. When you tell your story, when you put yourself out there, you put yourself in a position where you are essentially marketing your beliefs, your values, who you are, and you are attracting people that are just like you. All of you in this room are like Perry. Do you feel resonance with Perry? Right? We feel resonance with him. We are like him in many, many ways. There's things we resonate with on the positive side, and what Megan taught us was there's probably things that ache Perry that we also ache for as well. So I find that really interesting. But the advice that I'm always going to give people is it's got to be you. You know what? When Brandon and I formed Feed Stories 8, 9 years ago, our whole thought was we can combat commodity businesses by putting people on camera and telling their story. We don't like producing just educational-based content. We actually want to dig deeper. We dig into stories. Stories are so important because what customers really want is authenticity. And I know that word, we don't want to, there's got to be a better word, but it's really what we're talking about. When you're trying to build trust, when you're trying to build a relationship, when you're trying to create resonance, the only thing that I have found that works is being you and telling your story. It is so critical. Now, I will tell you, our most successful clients are ones that are confident in who they are. They know who they are, and they're confident enough to tell their story. And I'd say we've had 2 bad experiences in 8 years or 9 years working together. And both those instances, we looked back and said, they didn't know who they were. They weren't willing to go there. They shut themselves off and wouldn't share who they are. So being you is the absolute best way I know to connect with an audience. So Megan talked about existential crisis. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to say that at 4:15. That is awesome. Existential. I said it twice. Existential. So what this represents to me is I have been on Perry's stage multiple times over the last, 12 or 14 years. And I've talked about something different every time. I wrote a Facebook book with Perry. By the way, when you write a book with Perry, what that really means is Perry writes the introduction, and then you write the rest of the book. Right, Dennis? Okay. Oh, it wasn't a plug for your book. It was a plug for my book. I also hosted a radio show. I think that's how I met Dr. Mark. I hosted a radio show with a guy in Chicago named Mark Imperial. And Mark and I gave a presentation about putting a radio show on the air. I did Google Ads back in the day. When I stopped doing that, I helped people write books. And I was beating myself up recently, like, Bob, why do you keep jumping around? Why don't you just pick a lane? Pick a lane. And in my Renaissance time, I actually stopped myself and said, oh my goodness, everything I had done in my career, it's all been the same thing. The only thing that's changed is the platform. My deal is I help people discover who they are and help tell other people about it. That's what I do. I've done it in Facebook ads. I've done it in Google ads. I've done it in books. I've done it on podcasts. I've done it on a radio show. I do it in video. I help people create stories through experiences. I haven't done anything other than that for the last 20 years. And when I got to that point, I could breathe. I'm not jumping around from opportunity to opportunity. I am building up a portfolio. I'm building up a skill set. I can help anybody pick a platform, tell their story, and get it out there. I have a superpower. What's your superpower? When you take the view back, those of you that have got experience, can you look back and see, oh, it's a beautiful valley. It meanders, but I can see that it has a point. Really, really critical to take that work. So let's take a look at this here. So we keep talking about discovering who you are. What does that really mean? It's a complex subject, but let me try to break it down into a few things. The first thing are your values. Now, your values are the beliefs and principles that guide your choices, okay? I'd really say the principles. I don't know why I put the word beliefs in there. It's really the principles that guide your choices. Now, what I know about values is that they are inherent. Inherent. I believe you're born with them. I believe you're born with them. These are things that are encoded into your DNA, into your essence, and they express themselves throughout your life. I believe they're fixed. Maybe we could argue about that, but I believe they're fixed. Values are something that are extremely valuable to discover. Second thing is strengths. Strengths, I believe, first of all, they're your natural talents and abilities that empower you. This is how you do things. Well, I believe strengths and talents are inherent, but they can also be developed. I, despite my dreams, can only look like Michael Jordan because I wear his shoes. I am always going to be a better basketball coach than a player, but I'm never going to have that natural inclination to be able to do what Michael Jordan did on the basketball court. You can develop skills. I became a serviceable basketball player. I became a better basketball coach because I developed those things. So all of us are developing talents and strengths that we were born with, inclinations, right? Seeds. We grew those things. Personality. This one I really love. My unique essence that brings color and vibrance. This is humanity. Color and vibrance. I love those words. I had asked one of my mentors, hey, you got any advice for me as I share my talk? And she just said, bring your personality. Bring who you are. I believe your personality is inherent as well. If you have children, and my girls now are 24 and 22, my youngest especially, the spark in her eye at 6 months old has only gotten brighter. Who she was at 6 months old is who she is at 22. It's just now more amazing and more beautiful. All right? And you know this if you're a parent. You can see, man, that rambunctious girl at 6 months old who would giggle and tease, even at that young age, is the same girl that we have now. Now, beliefs. This is interesting. Beliefs are the way you kind of navigate. It's your map to the world. It's how you navigate things. Now, notice the spelling. Beliefs are inherited. You are not born with beliefs. You learn beliefs. Get the difference? Values are inherent. Beliefs are inherited. But they're just as much a part of you as your values, your strengths, your personality, and your beliefs. Now, beliefs are things, I'll call them programs, that kind of run on autopilot. It's kind of like you drive to work every day or drive to grandma's house. Like you automatically know the route. You don't need to GPS it because you just know where to go. Here's something that I want to challenge you with, and it's this. If you haven't challenged your beliefs, you really haven't done the work of discovering who you are. And for some, maybe they get into their 40s and they've never questioned why they believe what they believe. They just accept it. It's just who I am. I would argue otherwise. Now, I'm not saying that your beliefs are invalid. What I'm saying is challenge your beliefs to see, do they stand up with who I am? And if they do, great, you're in alignment. But most of us who feel an ache realize, oh my goodness, this thing that I've believed all along doesn't line up with who I am. This belief or this program that's running on autopilot doesn't serve me anymore. That's a scary place to be in, by the way, when you believe something for 30, 40, 50 years and realize it's no longer useful. It no longer serves me. I'm not saying it was right or wrong. I'm saying it's no longer useful. It doesn't serve me anymore. It's a scary place to be. But I believe it's one of the most useful things you could do, because when you believe something and you've consciously investigated it and say, yes, that's me, or no, that's not me, you've done some work. You've put a stake in the ground that says, this is who I am today. It's a really, really valuable thing to do. Now, there's something interesting that I've been playing with for a little while, and I have this voice in my head that will come in when I make a judgment about something, or I'm consciously aware of a belief that I'm operating under, and I'll hear this voice say, who said? Who said? Now, interesting enough, if you have read the Bible, a good coaching question is open-ended, and it goes like this. The first question God asked Adam and Eve in that story is, where are you? Have you ever worked with a coach? One of the things they ask is, where are you? Where are you at right now? The next question he asked was, who told you you were naked? Who told you? Who said? Interesting question, isn't it? What God was doing in that story is questioning their beliefs. Where are you? Have you thought about this? Who said? I would encourage you to have this automated tool running in your head to say, when you automatically default to something because it's what you believed all along, ask yourself the question, who said? Who said? Was that belief implanted in you by others, or was it a belief that you planted? Now, if it's a belief you planted, I said. It's a more powerful way to approach a belief. There's a lot of ways that we can investigate who we are. And I know a lot of the speakers have told you, like, hey, discover who you are, who you are. How do I do it? I'm going to go over these kind of quickly. I have a resource page for all of you. It has the slides. It has resources. It has tools. Make sure I tell you about the bonus I have on there. And it's not a marketing bonus. It's actually a creative bonus. Renaissance time, we've all talked about that. Spending time with yourself is critical. Assessments. How many of you just love taking like an online assessment like StrengthsFinder or Myers-Briggs? How many have done that? It's fascinating. And what happens when the test comes back and it nails who you are? Isn't it like a hit of dopamine? Like, oh yeah, how did that test know that I'm that way? Like, we love discovering who we are. It's one of the greatest drugs that we have. Oh, this test knows who I am. Maybe I'm weird. Masterminds. Putting yourself in a mastermind group where there is a social contract that says, I am going to be honest with you, and I'm going to be honest. So I'm going to be honest with myself and share myself with you, group. I expect you to reflect back to me what you hear and be honest with me. A true mastermind is where there is an exchange of honesty and trust, and you say, I'm going to share who I am, and they're going to reflect that back to you, and you get to decide, is that really who I am? They're going to be honest with you. There's a level of trust. You've had an opportunity to investigate Roundtable. I've been a part of Roundtable for 8 years. Moving forward, I'm going to be a part of Roundtable in a new way, and I'm going to be bringing some of my coaching ability to Roundtable. So I'm going to help people push their results even further than they have. I'm going to help the entire Roundtable and the Roundtable group and the AMN group move forward more quickly. It's about what results do I want to get? How do I get there? What actions do I need to take? And I'm going to take that skill to Roundtable. I hope to see many of you in that. Coaching. I'm moving more of my time, my professional time, to coaching. Why? Well, what happened last year, what I didn't share last year is when I was journaling in preparation for last year's talk, I wrote a little note. And what I wrote in my journal was, wow, I sure wish there was a way for me to become a coach where I didn't have to have 20 years of experience. I wrote that in my journal. I tried to find it. I have a bunch of journals. I couldn't find it. I wanted to show you. I said, I'm looking for a way for me to be impactful to people without having 20 years of experience. I reconnected with a former Roundtable member, Christian. He's right there. We ate dinner the last night. And I'm like, Christian, we haven't seen each other since San Diego before the pandemic. Can you remind me what you do again? And he pulled out a napkin, and he drew me a picture. And you can see that picture on my website. But essentially what he did was he showed me the answer to my question. And so right then and there, I said, Christian, I'm going to train with you. Christian trains coaches. He's the leading, I would say, the leading program for training professional coaches. And I have enjoyed being part of the program. Kathy's here. Kathy's a coach. Anna's a coach. I requested that. I put that in my Renaissance time. I want to do this. Christian literally gave me the answer. So that manifested in about 2 weeks. Coaching is one of the best ways to discover who you are. When you work with a professional coach, he or she will be able to help you identify these things quickly and do the work necessary to progress forward. I have been working with coaches for about 15 years, and I'm only where I'm at because of the people that I work with. The one on the bottom there, supernatural wisdom. I don't want to go too deep into that, but let's just say that I will go down any path necessary to discover who I am. We've got memos from the head office here. There are many other things that I would consider to be supernatural woo-woo out there. I investigate it. It's fascinating. Favor. Here's one thing that I've done, which I think you could find useful. Recently, as I'm trying to kind of build up testimonials for my coaching practice, and I haven't coached a lot of people. So I thought, how do I get testimonials? Here's what I did. I sent out a message to about 15 people, and I asked them 3 questions. And the questions weren't, tell me what I did for you. Tell me who I am for you. And I got back some of the most amazing responses, to the point where it was very emotional to even read them. If you were looking for an image of who you are, ask people that know you well to reflect back to you who you are. It's an amazing exercise. LLM, when you go to the resource page that I show you at the end, I've got a pretty cool prompt that I built that helps store some of the things like the assessments and things like that to kind of help with this. I've got a conversation set up in ChatGPT that I've had for 6 months, and I use it as a way to brainstorm with myself. Last thing is inner circle. You really need to have a group of friends that are high energy, that vibe with you, that you can just riff on things, and they're willing to share themselves with you. You know, Scott and Brandon and Christian and people are like that in my life. They're my inner circle that I go to when I have questions about who I am. So here's some really cool questions you could ask yourself that kind of reframe this whole idea of who I am. And it's the power of relation. So who am I in relation to a person or a thing? Who am I for this person or thing? So you could do this with your staff. Who am I in relation to my staff? Who am I in relation to my business? Who am I in relation to my significant other? Who am I in relation to AI? What we always ask is, what can my staff do for me? What can AI do for me? What can my spouse do for me? What if we flip that and said, who am I for them? When you do the work of who am I, that's foundational work. It's somewhat difficult work. But this is really the point of this, because the most exciting thing you get to do is you get to ask the question, who do I want to be? It's not enough to just discover who you are. Like, that's cool. But that's like table stakes. It's bedrock. It's foundational. It's great. But the real question you get to ask yourself is, who do I want to be? It's the point of living. We are creative beings. We get to create. We're all creators in this room. And so we get to decide who we want to be. Now, here's something to give you some encouragement. You may investigate yourself and say, I don't like who I am. Well, guess what? You can decide to be somebody else. Now, you're not going to change your values. You're not going to necessarily change your strengths overnight. You're not going to change your personality overnight. But oh my goodness, if you asked yourself, who do I want to be on a daily basis, that is an exciting life. Now, how do you discover who you want to be? Well, there's some powerful questions. First of all, what do I want? Probably the most difficult question I've ever asked myself in my life, because I'm an unselfish person. I'm humble, at least I claim to be. But I really have never asked myself that question, because it seems too self-serving. It just seems too self-serving. What do I want? I can't ask myself that question. But guess what? It's really powerful. And I've given myself permission to ask that question, and things have opened up in my life that have completely surprised me and have brought me more joy than I could have ever imagined. Ask yourself the opposite question too. What do I don't want? What do I not want in my life anymore? Say it. What do I don't want? I don't want this anymore. What excites me? We are taught in many places to squash our feelings. Don't trust your feelings. Don't trust your feelings. Well, feelings are the energy of your soul. And so we all believe that we're multi-part beings. We're body, mind, and soul. Why do we ignore our soul? Our soul wants to express itself in a way. The artist in us wants to express itself, but we're taught to squash that down because it's not logical. I've started to ask myself a question: what excites me? What excites me? What do I want to do? You can figure these things out. I call these clues. You could play. How do you play? We're adults. We don't play as much, but yeah, we do play. We do play. I would argue that the way I play golf reveals something about myself It might be a clue about who I am and who I want to be. We've all learned about Perry's hobbies over the years, speaker building. That's a clue to who we want to be. Our work. Serendipity. Serendipity. Serendipity is an occurrence of events. I want to make sure I get this right. Occurrence of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way. What has been serendipitous in your life lately? Be conscious of that. Synchronicity. Synchronicity. Didn't we talk about this morning, Anna? Something happens that surprises you in a really strange way. I introduced Kathy to my business partner, Brandon, and Kathy has a need for Brandon's services. That's a synchronicity play. What we read, what we watch, what we create, our relationships, the results that show up, these are all clues. I want you to understand this term, I am. I am is a very powerful word, and really what this means is it is a statement of creation. So when you decide who you are and who you want to be, I want you to start using the words in your journal. I want you to say out loud, I am. I am. It's a very powerful word to use. It's a creative word. It will drive you forward. When you say I am, the entire universe conspires to make that happen. Back in September 23, I wrote down in my journal this concept of fit in or fit around. And this was at a Perry Marshall Live event, and I shared this concept with people. Very powerful. Do you want your life to be about fitting in? Or maybe let's take the courageous position of how about we fit our life around this? So my wife and I have committed to an experiment. It's irrational. But here's what we're going to do. We are going to fit our life around golf and our relationship and fit work around that. Scott Shang decided he no longer wants to be in the mortgage industry. He is going to be all in on AI, and he's going to fit his life around that. I got a very good friend, I'll call him Victor, to protect his identity. He made a decision that he's going to quit being a business person for 5 years and be a full-time dad. Courageous. Courageous. But in the end, it's the right decision. What can you do that's courageous about fitting who you are first and then fit the other stuff around it? I would like to redefine the word self-centered. Self-centered is a word that many people think, yeah, narcissistic, right? Somebody you don't want to be around, they're selfish. But I would like for us to think of the real meaning of the word self-centered. A self-centered person is sure of who she is, stands firmly in that position, and then fits everything around them. So you could actually do more good in the world. You could do more service. You could be more joyful, more fulfilling, more profitable when you take a stand and say, this is who I am, and I'm going to live from the center of that outward. If you can't center yourself, now we talk about a centered person. If we say they're centered, that's a positive vibe, right? Like, oh, they're really centered, they're really focused. But when you say the word self-centered, all of a sudden it becomes a negative. Well, let's redefine it. That person is self-centered, they're sure. Perry is somebody I consider self-centered in a very positive way. And life expands outward from that. I think it's a really courageous decision to make, to say, I'm going to be self-centered. So when you start to think with that mentality, you can start to say, okay, what can my staff be for me? What can I be for my staff? What can I be for my business? Not who I am anymore, but who can I be? Many of you are having a question right now. Your business is changing. Well, who can I be for my business? All of us are trying to figure out where AI fits. Who can I be for AI? That's a really interesting question. This is a technology that's sitting there, but asking like, who can I be for AI? It's a really strange question to ask, but it's a good question to ask. You put that slide up. This is, you scan that QR code or go to that URL. I've got the presentation slides for you. I've got links to value tests, strength tests, and personality tests. Really cool tests. I've got an LLM prompt that you could use in Claude or ChatGPT to take the results of those tests and put them in and do some really powerful personal work to help you kind of clarify who you are. I've got some books on there that were that have been real important in my journey, especially in the last year, but about the last 10 years. And then my creative bonus. Scott knew I was getting ready for this presentation, but decided to distract me. He sent me this, what's the name of the tool, Scott? The music? Udi? So he sends me this tool like, oh, you can create an AI, you can create your own song. Well, the only instrument I learned to play, I played the clarinet in high school. But like, I don't want to write a song on a clarinet. And it's also been like 40 years since I played it. But I had some lyrics in my mind. I had some concepts. So I worked in ChatGPT with some concepts. And then I went over to this tool, and I put the lyrics in, and I described what I wanted the song to sound like. And this song came out. So I've got a song on there. My first song that I've ever written is on that page. I think it's amazing, and here's what's amazing. Anyone who knows me knows, like, I love Billy Joel. I love Tom Petty. Like, when Brandon and Scott heard the song, they're like, oh my goodness, that could be a Billy Joel song. No kidding. Like, that's the intention I put into it, and that's what I got out of it. So I think it's a great song, but if you don't like it, I don't want to hear it. Now, are we doing a panel right now? Should I take questions?
We're doing a break, and then Perry's going to come in and do a panel with you and Lonnie and Vivian.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so I'll be up here if you want questions. Go take your break, and then we'll set up for a panel. Thank you for your attention today. I appreciate you all.